Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero. AJ here with another look at military power of Immoren with a little bit of history to go with it. This one is a little differently structured from normal for such presentations, for a number of reasons. From a lore perspective, the pirates are somewhat ragtag, disjointed, and are not kingmakers in the manner the majority of the other powers within the setting are. Also, there is, to a degree, somewhat of a lack of known history, perhaps not of the concept of piracy in Immoren, but of the individual pirates, their ships, and, more pertinently for this series, their organisations. Even so, there's enough in the source material to cover a fair few separate aspects of pirate life. However, from a Warmachine perspective, the pirate roster, otherwise known as the Talion Charter, is rather narrow, at least in terms of thematic variety, a somewhat enforced limit because of how the mercenary faction, in inverted commas, is structured. Still, as a very character-driven sub-faction, not to mention it being the only strictly nautically themed one, its more personal nature, not just the nautical theme, allows for a slightly different take on the faction compared to how this series has been done thus far. When it comes to the trade known as being part of an Honourable shipping company, its early history is generally linked with the pre-Nightmare Empire of Crick's days in the Shard Archipelago. As their erstwhile title, Pirate King, would suggest, the Lich Lords under the Dragonfather supplanted what were once the leaders of several loose confederations of regional marauders. They were the most powerful sorcerers of the Isles, who acquired their position as kings through force of arms for the most part. Little remains of what they were like in life, or whether they attained rule through usurpation, inheritance, regicide, or some combination thereof. But their legacy and that of their predecessors is still very much alive, having expanded to much of the western coast of mainland Immoren. Granted, the pirates of Ord tend to be more prone to following certain rules than their counterparts to the southwest. That said, Immoren's pirates form an unpredictable dynamic of ever-changing loyalties and alliances which reflects the cutthroat politics, which one may call it if being charitable, of pirate culture irrespective of home port. The rival factions in Ord backstab and double-cross each other just as happily as the Crixian pirate factions do. The means may be a touch different, but the reasons and motivations are much the same. Though there is this transitory behaviour with regard to the ever-shifting diplomacy that the pirates carry out, if loosely, with both each other and the official powers of Immoren, Crixian and otherwise, across pirate history some groups of captains forged more permanent allegiances. In recent times, the most notable of these, and the most irritating as far as the Macarian League is concerned, is the Talion Charter, led by Bartolo Montador and Phineas Shea, who have a number of junior commanders at their disposal, including the unabashed Samurite warcaster Fiona the Black. Thus far, no alliance of pirate captains has been able to challenge the Talion Charter, and not just because both Montador and Shea are capable warcasters as well, but many pirate accords can muster the strength to at least keep them wary. Supposedly, were it not for the incidental discovery of his warcaster talents by one of the Styxis admirals, Iacos, who is now firmly set on his ascent through the Crixian echelons, may well have become a pirate lord strong enough to rival the Talion Charter. And despite the nominal illegality of piracy across all civilized nations of the Iron Kingdoms, the relationship between pirate and navy or government is not entirely hostile. Indeed, most states regularly employ privateers to raid enemy trade and ports more or less as an extension of their own navy. Ord in particular has an almost synergistic association with their pirates, to the extent the aforementioned Montador has a permanent letter of marque from King Baird, and supposedly pays his yearly tribute in person directly to the king himself. As to the people who live this life of piracy and crew the ships which ply the Immoren's coastlines for plunder, taking what they can and giving only choice words in return, as one might expect of such society, they largely hail from the lowest dregs of civilization. But this does not apply to all of them, and many come from more middle or even upper-class backgrounds, whether in terms of family or profession, for any number of reasons, be it fleeing creditors, evading the local judiciary for capital crimes, or simply for the novelty of experiencing a maritime adventure against a parent's wishes. In turn, this extends to the general composition of most crews, though there will be some variation among the different ships one is apt to encounter along the length of the Immoren's coastline. You do not need to look far to find Trollkin, Ogren, Gobbers, or even dwarves serving on board in one capacity or another. Elves, however, are certainly much more uncommon, but not unheard of, while finding a Styxis is possible, just not especially probable. But even so, most pirates of the Broken Coast are human, even if they do not discriminate against any who sign on with their crews. In this, they recognise that the seas and oceans care not what a sailor is. If you do not respect the waves, they will take your life just as easily, no matter if you're an Ogren or a Gobber. Irrespective of where they come from, or what they were in their previous life, all fresh crews start their ocean-going careers as the appropriately labelled sea dogs, who occupy the lowest rung on the pirates' hierarchy and command only that patch of deck they've been ordered to scrub. Even so, among themselves the sea dogs of any given ship will have their own dynamic, usually correlating to some combination of experience and physical prowess. The more well-favoured among sea dogs who manage to worm their way into the good graces of the quartermaster may, if they're sufficiently persuasive, shall we say, would be allowed to join shore parties as pressgangers, whose primary duty was aggressive recruitment, usually from drinking establishments round about closing time and debtors' prisons early in the morning. A different set of sea dog veterans man the ship's artillery, and sometimes when a shore party is required in force, a squad or two tow one of the ship's light cannon along as close fire support if a captain deems it necessary. And even though Crixians are, by and large, antagonistic towards the powers on the mainland and vice versa, the living pirates among them understand their lot in life well enough that Ordic and Cygnaran pirate outfits are quite content to take on shard islanders onto their ships provided they pull their weights while at sea. Thus, regular shard pirates are often a welcome addition to a mainland pirate ship's company, alongside their dirge seers, whose sorceress abilities few captains disregard without good reason. Not all who sign on to a pirate crew stays, though, and many have a distinct reason for sailing at a particular time or to a particular place. Naturally, few among such people actually have the skills, power, or charisma to come and go as they please with a captain's favour, so it is an uncommon person who matches such a description. I mention this if only because I am a seeker, and another, Ayana, was known for taking ship on board the Talion to look beyond the Immore's mainland for answers to our race's ills. Though a handful of other seekers have served on pirate ships, none have Ayana's standing among captains or her longevity at sea. In a completely different, and decidedly macabre, vein are the 3 survivors from a doomed voyage whose status as living or undead is often the topic of hushed debate among the superstitious. The Devil's Shadow Mutineers, though whether they actually mutinied is also a matter of hushed debate among the superstitious, come and go as they please, and none but the most gifted arcanists dare question their activities. And on that thought, only the most desperate make deals with them to buy the strength of their sword and pistol, even if certain captains, that is, those like Fiona the Black, find them intriguing and useful enough for their blind thirstiness alone. To the average sea dog, the Devil's Shadow Mutineers are a hurricane by themselves, and not just because their arrival and departure is marked by the passing of sometimes devastating storms. The last example of a pirate who is both crew and not is the eccentric gateman known as Crawtooth. Since elves and dwarves are an uncommon sight on pirate ships, while gatemen are as much as never seen in such a setting, Crawtooth is something of a mundane novelty, even among the pirate crews. They are used to seeing fellow sea dogs of every shape, size and biological composition, but a gateman is something new even for the longest in the tooth. From what I've heard about him, most captains are somewhat daunted by his approach and don't refuse him permission to take ship with them, usually out of sheer bewilderment. That said, those who have experienced his presence on board describe him as gruff, but an excellent fisherman. Though by fishing I mean sharks and the occasional immature tasselworm, not fish. He's also considered exceedingly odd thanks to his general misunderstanding of naval terminology, a tendency to loudly identify his next meal by name, invariably another member of the crew, and interrupt whatever he's doing to swing precariously from a spar using his barbed hook and squint at the horizon only to declare having sworn seeing a Dracodahl. Nevertheless, none can deny his sea legs. And of course, there's the part which concerns perhaps the most important aspect of a pirate's armoury, their ship. While trends of meant certain designs have seen prominence at various points in history, actually pinning down a system of classification for the plethora of different pirate ships which exist has proven next to impossible for naval officials from Cygnaran and Cador. The Warmachine Navy, however, never bothered to make the effort, aware their fleet alternates between fighting, relying upon, and even including pirates, oftentimes their own. Indeed, from the early days of the pirate kings of the Shard Isles, there's been a stark contrast between the sheer variety of ships which take to the sea, and those types of ship which may be considered the most effective, crew quality notwithstanding. This then led to compromised designs which balanced the average captain or pirate sponsor's wealth and influence with sea-going combat effectiveness. All through the ages, the poorer and less ambitious fought in fast, sleek and generally small ships, light in armour, armament and complement, exemplified in sloops of war and smaller brigs. Such a vessel allowed another compromise, which was the predictable fickleness of regular pirates, who might see better prospects elsewhere, so the ship was designed to be easy to sail with just a skeleton crew. Though not used by Ordic and Cygnaran pirates, the Styxis is an example of this style of sloop, even if their reasons for using them is more tied to Styxis culture, rather than pirate culture per se, even if both would place great stock in hit-and-run tactics. On the other hand, what one may label as a pirate's pirate, who lived to pillage and plunder rather than the other way round, helmed the quintessential pirate ships of their respective ages. They were, and are, of moderate size with a good balance of speed, heavier than expected armament, and armour on the broadside which was generally enough to weather fire from anything up to ships of a similar size. Some were protected well enough to absorb an initial engagement against superior enemies and survive a fighting retreat. These days, such a ship would be something along the lines of a cruising frigate, powered by steam and or sail depending on the owner's means, armed with a couple dozen 12-pounder guns, supplemented by an occasional larger weapon, and crewed by a couple hundred or so. Shay's ship, the charter's eponymous Talion, which was financed by the Rulic investor Rockbottom, is one such example, if a bit heavier in all respects than what is normally sailed by the pirates of the Broken Coast. What remains were and are the larger status symbol ships, sailed by commanders of pirate alliances, used as a means to intimidate ally and rival alike. These come in all manner of configurations, but are notable for some combination of large armament, heavy armour, and extensive support facilities which can come in the form of warjack, storage, an armoury for specialised marine boarding actions, and so on and so forth. One of the most famed ships of this sort is Montador's Calamitas, whose formidable armament is one of the reasons the order captain is nicknamed Broadsides. Also, for this discussion, the Calamitas provides a good contrast to the Talion in terms of design and aesthetic. Unfortunately for those who count their pennies, though, such a ship as Calamitas is in reality very impractical for independent action, and their captains are more akin to admirals, as they well know at least a moderate flotilla of smaller and faster ships is necessary for efficient pirating. As with all things, though, what lays ahead for Immoren's pirates and pirate confederations remains uncertain, and whether or not they flourish will no doubt be a matter of their own ingenuity and resourcefulness. But if their past is anything to go by, there isn't much which will limit their future prospects, even the reappearance of the Orgoth.